Girl, same. We got our first snow of the season up here, and my seasonal depression is kicking in the front door like the Kool-Aid Man on an episode of Family Guy.
I don't think he kicks in the front door. I think he goes through the wall.
Okay, I've got to interject. Have you seen that meme? It's like, I ordered the seasonal depression mild, but this shit came extra spicy.
I haven't seen that one, but I felt it in my heart.
I'll have to send it to you. It's so good.
That's
Deal.
Amazing. I think that's an incredible opportunity for us to introduce our guest here, Aaron.
100%. So, since we've been working through our feelings and, diving into this stuff head first, we brought on Lauren McNeese, who is a self-described writer, survivor, and mental health advocate. Whenever I had my first conversation with Lauren, I felt her personality is just so warm and loving and bubbly that we knew we had to bring her on the show. So, Lauren, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you on the show today, Lauren. I do want to go ahead and give a quick trigger warning for all of our listeners. I know we talk about a lot of mental health struggles and things of that nature, but it is always important for me to remind the listeners that before we get into the episode, there could be some topics or conversations in this episode that could be triggering, such as mental health, suicidal ideations, or anything of that nature. As we get into the episode, if it's too much and you need to turn it off and continue at a later time, please do so. Take care of yourself first, but we are going to make sure Lauren's story gets told in its entirety, no matter how beautiful or ugly it can be.
So, Lauren, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your journey that has brought you to where we are today?
Absolutely. So, hi, my name is Lauren. Aaron introduced me as I am a self-described writer, survivor, and mental health advocate. I'm also pursuing my BS in nursing, so that's a fun little side hustle, but I, if you can call it that, I have been through residential psychiatric treatment. I was actually a college student who fell into a bit of a psychotic episode where mental health symptoms for bipolar and similar diagnoses typically emerge around the early 20s or late teens, and so it's really shitty timing when you're trying to get your higher level education and then these symptoms kind of onset. But I took a break to pursue treatment to get healthy again, and I've really just been sharing tips and tricks that I gained through my journey, and also what I learned and why I'm still here and still fighting, and why I believe that the journey is hard, but it is really worth it.
And what awful timing. Your late teens and early 20s is when people expect you to have your shit together and to be building the foundations for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
We know the brain doesn't develop till 25. Let's take it easy till then. How about? Oh my God.
That's always been one of my biggest problems after moving to Europe and seeing how the family dynamic works here, where it's like the idea of moving out of your parents' house before you have a career and actual income coming in and schooling's been long gone. You're looking at possibly getting married or whatever. But if you stay living with your parents till 30, 32 or whatever, that's considered the norm. There's nothing wrong with that. In America, it's like on the 18th birthday, that kid better be out of this house, working down the street and struggling. Like, come on, man. They're not even fully developed. That's ridiculous.
I agree.
So when you were in uni, things kind of started coming apart, it sounds like.
Yes. My symptoms really ramped up around my sophomore year freshman and sophomore year, I went through IOP, which is intensive outpatient at Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital. Midway through my freshman year, it kind of put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and helped me get through the rest of the year and the first semester of my sophomore year. And then things just kind of went downhill from there. So I did admit to residential psychiatric treatment at Skyland Trail in Atlanta. 10 out of 10 recommends that program if you need a higher level of care. And with my bipolar diagnosis, I went through psychological testing, and was able to get a clearer picture of my diagnoses, which are post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar type 1, obsessive compulsive disorder, borderline personality disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder. And it sounds like a lot. They kind of overlap in my case. And with a clearer picture of my diagnoses, I was able to get a more specialized treatment plan, which was very beneficial, and really do a deep dive into the therapy modalities that were most beneficial to me in my journey.
That's splendid. I mean, I'm glad that they were able to cater their treatment to actually help you specifically with what is going on. And I think that's amazing in the mental health profession that they have gone such leaps and bounds in the past couple of decades, that not only are they focusing on mental health as a legitimate health crisis, but they actually have treatments catered to individuals now. It's a lot better than trying to fix a broken bone with a hammer, you know? I do have a question about how your mental health had started deteriorating. Did it happen like gradually, or was it something that kind of felt like the dam broke, like it's always been hiding back there?
So I think that it was kind of over time started deteriorating. The way I think about it in my case was a lot of micro traumas deposited into a bank. And over time, because they were unresolved, they started developing interest. This is not like a professional analogy, like I made this up by myself. So disclaimer, it's not perfect. But all of that to say, it really caught up with me my sophomore year. I went through a lot of really difficult things throughout childhood that were unresolved in therapy. I went through a really difficult experience my freshman year of college. I talked about going through IOP, that Band-Aid on a bullet wound, but it still kind of caught up to me later down the journey. And then with bipolar, there's this huge debate, I'm sure you've heard of it, nature versus nurture, with a psychiatric diagnosis like bipolar type 1, where what I believe to be my first hypomanic episode was actually back in my sophomore year of high school. I went to a private Christian high school, which was an amazing opportunity, and at the same time, I was under really intense academic pressure. And I had a really difficult home life, and I was kind of fed this narrative that the way to get out of the difficult situation would be to like crush my academics, go to a prestigious university, get a great job, and just get the hell out of here. And that's not what happened. And so I really put a lot of pressure on myself. And because of that, I was sleeping like 3-4 hours a night. And that really triggered hypomania for me. And then because of the hypomania, what goes up must come down, as they say. So I fell into a depressive episode. And because the hypomania hadn't been diagnosed or documented, I was put on an antidepressant. So SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are not friends with individuals who have a diagnosis of bipolar, because they will send you into a manic episode. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist. In some cases, a low dose may be appropriate to manage depressive symptoms. For me, they never mixed. And so I was thrown into full-blown mania, where I was on the verge of psychosis. And so that was my first hospitalization. And they really changed my medication. It was a week-long stay at a local psychiatric hospital. I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings about America's healthcare system when it comes to psychiatric hospitalizations. Hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that. And that was really my first experience with a higher level of care. I am thankful for that experience because it kind of made me not as scared of the hospital as I had been previously. It kind of showed me like this can be a safe place to get healthy. And since then, I had been hospitalized several times, sometimes once or twice, I'm not scared to admit, against my will. And then once or twice, I self-admitted and was like, hey, I need a breather. Like, I need a couple days to emotionally regulate. And then even self-admitting to residential psychiatric treatment, like that was a choice I made. No one forced me to do that. There's a term called voluntold, where it's like I volunteered in a sense, and then in a sense there was also like this stipulation of like, okay, a lot of people are about to like cut contact with me if I don't seek a higher level of care. My therapist was like, I'm sorry, I can't see you anymore because there's nothing else I can do for you unless you seek a higher level of care. Like, I'll see you until you get admitted. I'll see you after. Like, I'll be here, but I'm sorry, you've got to follow medical advice. So I don't know if that kind of answers the question, but long story short, it was a gradual thing and decline to get to rock bottom.
Yeah. Sounds almost like a snowball. Like it starts off small and then slowly gets bigger and bigger as it goes down until it's an avalanche.
Absolutely.
So you brought up a few things that I'd really like to just touch back on really quick. First, most people experience complex trauma in their childhood. Like,
yes.
While we're forming our brains and our bodies, we have a very specific set of needs, and our culture is not built around facilitating us getting those needs met. So most people walking around, I think one of the major reasons behind this anxiety and depression epidemic in our country and the world at large is because we aren't having these needs met, and then we get stuck in our parasympathetic system because we've been in fight or flight for so long. And then, I've been working through Dr. Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal, which talks a lot about how we're living in a toxic culture, one that's not designed for us to thrive in this environment. It's oftentimes all we can do to eke out a meager existence and just barely survive. It's not shocking, and I find it it makes me very sad that this is such a relatable story. We're all one step away from being admitted 90% of the time. How are you doing? Living the dream. I wish I would die. That's how a lot of people feel.
Can I add something really quick about something you just said?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I think it's really noteworthy how you talked about complex trauma being developed in childhood, because those are our developmental years. And I'll just be upfront, I was never physically abused, but I went through a lot of trauma, and some folks will say lowercase t trauma versus uppercase T trauma.
Yep.
I really don't like that term because PTSD and CPTSD can be developed without physical abuse, without a close death, without your life or someone else's life close to you being in danger. I have very deep attachment wounds from several men who entered and exited my life throughout my childhood, father figures, and then just a lot of other things going on that we don't really have time to delve into, but I never had like this sense of stability or security. And because of that, I was, like you said, always in fight or flight. And so one thing I'm passionate about is just normalizing the fact that we all have some sort of lowercase t or uppercase T trauma. And in my case, it was quote unquote uppercase T trauma because of the fact that I was in a more emotionally vulnerable place. And if you look at the diagnoses of PTSD in the DSM-5, it's things that impact your day-to-day life, cause panic attacks, cause nightmares, things like that really stick with you over a prolonged period of time. And these things have stuck with me. And so that's really how I met the criteria for a diagnosis of PTSD. It didn't have to be this huge one event. It was many events over a period of time. And I just want people to understand that.
I really do like that you pointed that out, Lauren, because it is very important for people to understand that, yes, two different human beings can experience two completely different types of trauma, but that doesn't invalidate the trauma that the other individual, or the quote-unquote lesser trauma, as some people might look at it, it's still trauma. And people need to stop kind of being like, well, my trauma's worse. And I know there's a lot of like memes out there about like, my neurodivergent brain wants to, you know, connect with you by telling you how bad my life has also been, stuff like that. That was a really terrible explanation of that meme, but somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. I do think it's very important, though, for people to understand that trauma is trauma is trauma. Just like our good buddy Jay Saunders said in his episode, it doesn't matter what your trauma is. What matters is how much that trauma affected you. And it's not fair for somebody to be like, oh, you just have X, Y, or Z issue. That's not fair. That is not fair.
Right.
So before we get into the orange scarf, really quick, I want to talk about what therapy modalities have worked for you, because I know you brought that up, and I'd really like to hear if you're working with CBT or EMDR or, the heart method. What's working for you? Absolutely.
So I did some EMDR and found that it wasn't really clicking with me. So there's a therapy modality very similar to EMDR, but that's a little bit more open-ended, called brain spotting. And I did brain spotting, and it was a game changer for me. So EMDR, I know you've done a lot of discussions and episodes about that, so I won't really delve into that too much, but it's great for a lot of folks. It was beneficial in some ways for me. 10 out of 10 recommend exploring EMDR if you have trauma. It's not less than or greater than brain spotting, I would say, though, because the way my brain is just wired and how I make so many connections between so many different experiences, it was hard for me to take one negative belief. Like in EMDR, a target belief or a negative core belief I had was, I am unlovable. And then the target belief was, I am lovable. And within going from point A to point B, I would go on so many tangents, and it just wasn't really clicking for me. So brain spotting is a little bit more open-ended, where you just recognize what's coming up, recognize it without judgment, and then process that. And then you can go to the next point, and you're still kind of working towards an end goal, but it's in a little bit of a different way. So that was for the PTSD diagnosis that I kind of went through that treatment. With OCD, I have been doing a deep dive into ERP, which is exposure and response prevention. So you take a trigger and you make a hierarchy of things that are distressing on your SUD scale. So I would take an obsession and a compulsion and put it on a hierarchy of least distressing to most distressing. And I would start with the least distressing and expose myself to that either in a controlled environment with my therapist, or if it was, lower on the SUD scale, I was able to do it myself after learning the process. And then after exposing myself to the trigger, recognizing the distress that came up and engaging with what's called an RPM, or response prevention message. So say that I am really triggered by a certain song. For example, like a song that was in the background during a traumatic experience, for example. And it was, for some reason, lower on the hierarchy. and I was able to listen to the song, but distress came up and I was like having urges to like pull out my hair. That's a compulsion for me, or scratch my arms, which is a compulsion for me, like to the point of bleeding, scabbing over, etc. So those are two really common compulsions. But then engaging with an RPM and saying, maybe I'll be okay, maybe I won't, or maybe not. Maybe I'll engage in this compulsion, maybe not. But really riding the wave and learning to sit with that discomfort and distress has been a game changer, and you can work yourself up on the hierarchy. One thing I saw on Instagram, which I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram because I feel like at times it's been very informative and very helpful for me, was it's unrealistic for CPTSD and PTSD survivors to think that they will never encounter their triggers, but it is realistic to know that we can change our relationship with the triggers. And that's been very powerful and very helpful for me to keep in mind throughout treatment.
I love how compassionately you speak about these things. That says a lot about you as a person and how your journey has really helped you express and be able to work through your traumas, because you've tried these things, but you didn't come out being like, well, it sucks, I can't be hypnotized, so hypnotizing is fake or BS. You're very much like, it just didn't work for me, but it does work for others. So you're informed, and I think that's incredible. So I just really wanted to compliment you on that, Lauren. I love the compassion in which you speak about these things.
Thank you.
So, do you think you're ready to get into the titular orange scarf story? Or is there more groundwork you want to lay?
No, I'd love to talk about it. So, for the listeners who don't know, I am writing a book, and it's about an orange scarf, and an orange scarf that saved me in a terribly unexpected and profoundly beautiful way. So, if you are dealing with suicidal ideation and you seek professional help, which you definitely need to if you're experiencing suicidal ideation, you may be asked to submit to what is called Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, CSSRS. And so it's a series of questions. It's like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you identify with this statement? Have you made a plan? Do you have intent with the plan? Things like that. And at the end, there's this question that's like, what are some reasons you have to live? And sometimes we really struggle, or I'll say in my experience, I really struggle to have this profoundly like beautiful statement of like, I want to live for my family, because that doesn't always resonate with me. When I'm in a really, really dark place, sometimes I'm like, to hell with it all. Like, I don't care about the effect this would have on my family. Like, I will be so narrow-minded and not able to see a clear picture. However, at one point in my life, I was able to hold on to seemingly small, seemingly insignificant things. Like, I actually want to live because I love autumnal mornings, and I want to drink a chai on an autumnal morning and enjoy the fall crisp air. So one morning I was thinking, and I had this psychiatrist throughout residential psychiatric treatment. I have coined the term dad crush, which is where you wish someone was your dad, but they're not, and you have like this kind of like dad crush on them.
Yeah.
He is like so kind, so sensitive. I had a tricky relationship with my father, and at the time I was just like, I would love if this psychiatrist was like, in a past life, my dad.
Adopt me, please.
Yes, I have adopt me, please. I have since repaired things with my dad in a lot of ways, and so I don't have that exact same perspective anymore. All of that to say, sorry, lots of words to get somewhere. He shared with me that he knitted his daughter a scarf. He didn't realize he had to do a certain stitch on the end of each row, so it was kind of curled. It wasn't perfect. It was extra long, so it wrapped around her body several times. Like, it was just such a beautiful moment to hear about how, because I am a survivor of trauma, I fell into this negative core belief that, like, all men are dangerous. That's a negative belief that I really struggled with. And so to have this kind and sensitive and caring man share with me that he knitted his daughter an orange scarf changed my perspective in a lot of ways, and was like, hey, actually, this negative core belief may not be based in reality. And, like, obviously, I know so many wonderful men who have, like, challenged this belief in a lot of other ways. However, this was just like a really tangible thing to grasp onto. I am writing a book, and there's a chapter in there about going through the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale with one of the licensed practical counselors, and talking about my reason to live being an orange scarf, because that was a very small, very tangible thing that I could grasp onto.
Wow. First of all, dad crush. That's incredible. I stumbled upon a TikTok page recently called TikTok Dad, where this guy will, like, respond to people's posts where they mention some awful stuff. Like, this one in particular was like this woman being like, she was like, my dad, blah blah blah, X, Y, and Z, and all I want is a coffee or something. And he like, he did a video and he was like, hey, hi, TikTok Dad here. Hey, we're your family now. He had, like, his 2 daughters in the car. He's like, these are your sisters. We're gonna go to Disney this weekend, so we're gonna buy you a ticket. And I thought that was incredible, and that's the first thing that came to mind. Dad crush. That's awesome. And but that story about the scarf, that is so beautiful. And it's incredible that a moment like this seemingly kind of, superfluous moment is what provided such a sharp change in one of your negative core beliefs. And it's, to me, I find it beautiful because Aaron and I, we've talked a lot on this show about how we feel like life will put in front of us what we need at that moment. And you're walking the right path because those moments happen. And that's what comes to mind when I think of your story. Like, yes, you had to go through all that trauma, and yes, you had to deal with these mental health crises and go through the counseling and the therapy and the medication. But all of that led to this beautiful moment, this story that maybe only took up a couple minutes, but it had such a profound effect on you that, look at you, you're publishing a book from it. I mean, that is incredible. If there's ever been a moment in life that I think, no matter how much trauma put you there, but it was worth it, I think that's one of them. 100%. Beautiful story, Lauren.
Thank you.
So what this... I have a delayed processing thing that happens in my brain.
Back to dad crush.
For me, actually, it's the concept of challenging beliefs and, like, allowing yourself, showing yourself that grace that, like, maybe I will engage in this behavior, maybe I won't. I think that that's incredibly empowering. It's not, I have to or I don't have to. As Tim has said many a time, most of the world is gray. It's not all black and white. So allowing yourself to feel that compulsion and say, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And that removes a lot of the power from it, because you don't have to decide right now. It doesn't have to be yes or no. You can exist in that limbo and, like, as Eric Lee said in his episode, have a nuanced approach to it. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll find something else to do. Wow, that's powerful. Another thing, we recently had a guru on who's, like, coming into his power and talks about the crystal ball theory. where if you had a crystal ball and you could look back at all your past experiences and see how they brought you to this moment and everything that's going to come from all that you've been through, how beautiful would that be? And I think that that's a story that's pretty applicable right now, is, being able to transmute all these negative feelings, because all these experiences that the three of us have been through have been incredibly painful. They have felt so traumatic, but what's coming next is so freaking beautiful.
Yes.
And finding those little things to hold on to really will save your life. When Tim went through the OC course, the thing that got him through was, well, Aaron made it through, so I guess I have to now too. And one thing that's brought up a lot is the ripples. If someone you know and love has had suicidal ideations or made a suicide attempt or, heaven forbid, taken their own life, that plants that in your brain as an option. So why would you want to plant that seed in those around you? If that's the only thing that keeps you around is, I don't want Tim to think that this is an option. I don't want Lauren to see this as a viable alternative to suffering. So if that's the one thing that's keeping you around, cling to it. Let that be your orange scarf.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't want to monopolize the conversation there. So, Lauren, you've been publishing some really captivating stuff on your socials recently that you've thankfully been sharing with me. Is there anything else you feel called to speak to right now from that?
So, I was wondering, totally say no. I made a tribute on social media to recognize my friend who actually was lost to his disease. And I'm wondering if I can read that today.
Yes, absolutely. Please.
Okay, so the title was The Phone Call That Changed Some Things That Did Not Change Some Things, and My Promise to You. Friends, if you've been here a minute, you probably know that I've been through treatment. It's not a secret. I got a message last week about a friend I was in treatment with. He was lost to his disease. I love him, I miss him, I will forever cherish my time knowing him. And I believe that I will see him again one day. This message changed some things, this message did not change some things. What it changed is my perspective, my compassion for others given their unseen battles, my awareness of the many, many miracles taking place around me. What it didn't change is my God's unfailing love, His promises, His presence with us forever and always, that His light has overcome the darkness. I am going to make each of you a promise to continue to love others wholeheartedly, to forgive, to give the really kind, really hot nursing student my number when I see him next. Wish I were joking, but I'm not. Amongst other things I have learned in this world, you gotta shoot your shot. There are no magic words I can say to make this any better, but here's a poem anyways, or part of a poem, whatever. Let the light shine through all the cracks, scars, and questions, and stay. And I know there are days when the last thing you want to do is stay, but if you stay for today, then I'll see you tomorrow. And tomorrow is worth staying for. And maybe tomorrow we can have some confetti cake. And that's Stay, section from Stay by Tanner Olson. Thank you for letting me read that. It was very meaningful for me to write that and kind of not process it entirely on social media, but process a part of it on social media and share with others the impact that losing this friend had on me, and then sharing kind of the way I want to live my life moving forward in light of that loss.
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that, Lauren. I'm very sorry for your loss, and I'm glad you were able to take that and make such a beautiful, I guess, remembrance, and also a kind of a dedication to those around you. I know that loss and grief, they can be very overpowering. And it can become very difficult to see any kind of light when you're suffering in those kinds of strong and heavy emotions. So being able to see the kind of positivity that you're still taking to spread to those around you and the promise that you want to give to your loved ones. I don't know. I find that so empowering because when I was in your shoes, I couldn't do that. I didn't see a light. I crumpled under the weight. And I don't know, seeing your strength and hearing it here, it feels incredible. So you're a fighter. You're pretty badass.
Thank you.
So, is there anything that you can convey to the audience about how they can survive in the same way that you have? Because you are a scion of light here for us, and this is us sharing your story. So how do we help others to embody that strength?
I would say, first and foremost, notice what comes up for you in difficult times and really hold space for that. Recognize it without judgment. And if you need to seek professional help, there is no shame in that. I don't ever want any sort of stigma to stop someone from seeking help if they need it. And know that I've been there. I know you all have been there. It's really fucking hard. I know you're going to have to edit that out before we publish it.
No.
It's really effing hard. Okay? And if you can find the strength in yourself to power through, and I don't mean power through as in do it yourself, seek help, get the help you need. And if you can hang on, which I have faith that you can, because so many people who have been in similar situations have, and you can draw inspiration and strength from those people and their stories, you will find that things get better. And I was in the hospital with a girl who was 18. She had just graduated to what was the adult program, and I overheard the nurses talking. There was no privacy around the nurses station. She was on the phone with, I guess, the doctor or someone, and said, this is her first suicide attempt. She's not on any medication. This is her first rodeo. First of all, I thought that was a pretty insensitive and shitty thing to say. Second of all, my heart went out to her because I had been where she had been. I had been 18. I had my quote-unquote first rodeo. So we talked about books. We talked about, silly, goofy things. I wasn't trying to, change her life or anything in my short time knowing her. But I did write her a note, and I left it in a book that I left for her to read and enjoy while she was in treatment at the hospital. And I just said, I'm not going to pretend to know what you're going through, but I can tell you that I have been where you are, at least in some ways. And if you can find it in yourself to carry on, you will find that it gets better. And I saw it in the first day I met you. You are a fighter, and you can make it through.
That's a beautiful message, and a message for every single person listening. In our episode with Aristotle, he talked about how you are the overcomer of your obstacles. That's who you are. And I struggle with a lot of physical and mental pain. And the other day I kind of had this realization that that's one of the huge purposes in the life I'm living now, is I get to experience extreme suffering. And through that, I get to offer that up to source or deity or God or however the ultimate. And I think we're doing a massive disservice if we hate our experience that is being given to us.
Absolutely.
So again, I process things very slowly. I love that you talk about it being little things that we stick around for, being books, films, TV shows, reaching out to our friends. So I will ask for the audience, what movie or book keeps you around? Whenever you're going through a hard time, what book are you excited about opening back up? That if you left today, you would regret not being able to read your favorite book again, or not being able to watch Troy with Brad Pitt again. You know, please
or Gladiator
leave.
2.
Oh God, it was so bad.
I absolutely adore Matt Haig. He wrote Reasons to Stay Alive, The Midnight Library. I'm working through The Life Impossible right now, and The Comfort Book. And so I have it. I own it in the physical copy and also on Libro FM. I'll listen to it when I'm having a hard time at night when I can't sleep and I need to self-soothe. And then I have gone back and reread them as well. They are really powerful and I love them. And I may or may not have a dad crush on Matt Haig. Anyhow,
cycling it back.
I would miss those. Also, my favorite movie, I have no shame. I was in an English class, a higher level English class, and the question posed was what's your favorite film? People were like, Midnight in Paris, all of these prestigious, silly, goofy movies that were so advanced. And I was like, Home Alone. Have you seen it?
Yes!
I love that movie. I fucking love that movie.
It's so good. It's set as a prestigious movie, 100%.
Real life mousetrap.
100. Oh my, it's so good. It's so good.
You can overcome anything with a little bit of planning and some ingenuity. Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
I love that movie. It's so good. We watch it every Christmas. Every Christmas. That and Home Alone 2.
Okay, controversial opinion. Do you like Home Alone 1 or Home Alone 2 better? I must know.
No, please don't make me answer this. It's Home Alone 2, and I'll tell you why.
Is it the bird lady?
It's the toy store. Because I always wished we had a toy store like that growing up. And we had a Toys R Us, which was fine. But it was not Home Alone 2 level. And I think it was incredible. And I was like, damn, I really want that toy store. So I think that's solidified in the back of my mind, I just want to watch Home Alone 2. So here we are, Home Alone 2.
Awesome. I know our time is precious and fleeting and we don't have a lot more of it. I could talk to you guys forever and ever. You guys are amazing. One thing I want our listeners to consider checking out, I do share a lot on social media recently I've been doing a series on tips and tricks for navigating things that are potentially really triggering throughout the holidays. I did a post and processed some tips and tricks for navigating the holidays in substance use disorder recovery, and then I did one on navigating the holidays in eating disorder recovery, and then I'm about to publish one on just general mental health recovery. I am a mental health advocate. For better or for worse, I share recovery-focused tips and tricks and things I've learned along my journey. So if I can give my Instagram handle, shameless plug, but I think it could potentially benefit some listeners, it's Lauren McNeese _writer.
And we'll definitely make sure that that's linked below in the description. We want our audience to be able to find as many resources and link them up with the right people who can help them with what they're struggling and what they're facing. And Lauren, with you being such a compassionate and also energetic advocate for mental health, we 100% want to have our audience and listeners go and look at your profile and see what it is that you're providing to them and learn a couple things from you, because we can all learn from each other. We all know something that the other doesn't. Thank you for joining us, Lauren. It's absolutely amazing. I don't want to cut you off here, So I want to give you the opportunity here. Is there anything that you wanted to bring to our attention or talk about today that we did not get the opportunity to mention yet?
Yes, so this could be a question that you process you two in a later episode. I don't think we really have time to do a deep dive into it today, but one thing I'd like to know as a woman in recovery who went through treatment with young men and young women is how can women best support men in their mental health recovery and journey? Because my friend who I mentioned earlier, he was a young man, and whenever I was struggling, I would be like, come here and hold me. And one time joking, I'm like, let me just come here and hold you. And he's like, that's not how this works. And I'm just like, well, how can I support you? I don't know how to be there for you. Like, I know what I want out of a friendship and need out of a friendship when I'm struggling. But you've got to like work with me here. I want to be there for you. How can I be there for you?
I think that's an incredible question, and I really want to hear from the listeners on this one. Please leave a comment and reach out to us about what your answer to this question is. Now, I think it's an interesting question, and I feel like my answer is kind of boring, so I'm going to wait to give it until maybe at a later time, because I want to make sure that I ponder it properly, especially after this conversation. I don't want to just dive in and provide a underbaked answer, I'm going to say.
For me, I think a lot of us would benefit from the wisdom of women, because men and women live such radically different lives and have such radically different experiences. Tim, being so close to me, unfortunately gets to experience my anger and my frustration that I feel so deeply, so often. And
mostly about technology.
Yeah, Jesus. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you, listeners, for joining us on this conversation, for taking part in this conversation down in the comments below, or reaching out via Discord or any of our socials. We really appreciate you, and if you feel called to, please join that Discord. Hit us up on Patreon, which, if you didn't know, is a subscription service where you can support us directly, fiscally, in a way that's going to help this channel grow.
By joining us over on our Patreon, if you do wish to help us, financially speaking, of course, and you can join at multiple membership tiers. We have $1 all the way up to, I think, $100 tier. But even just for the $1 tier, you actually get our episodes a couple days early. So if you want to spend your Wednesdays listening to Aaron and I have a beautiful conversation with somebody like Lauren, then maybe consider joining our Patreon. If not, our episodes will always be there every Friday just for you all.
On our Patreon, once you contribute $20 a month, you get a special shout out at the end of every episode. So, our $20 a month patron, Eric Spears. Thank you so much.
Now, quick disclaimer here. Aaron and I are not mental health professionals. With that being said, if you need assistance, please call 911 or text or call 988 for immediate medical intervention.
If you don't have a therapist on retainer and you feel called to obtain one, you can use our code betterhelp.com/NSLP. Gets you 10% off your first month. And you can switch therapists at any time at no additional cost. Get the help you deserve on your terms.
Be good to yourselves and each other.
We love you.
Peace. So take a breath, you're right on time. No street lights, but we're finding our way. In the dark, but we've got something to say. Lessons learned and stories untold.